been some extraordinary videos that have been shared on social media, either by the authorities or by firefighters themselves or by members of the public, showing just how bad some of the roads are. It just, inferno on each side of some of the roads up in these areas, particularly in Avila province that I've seen so far. So yeah, it's very dangerous out there. So that's why we've got people who are being told to evacuate and to get to safety, and people are being told to stay in place.
Now, the wildfires in Spain and France have forced the evacuation of more than 250,000 people, as authorities in both countries are currently struggling to bring the fires under control. France's Interior Minister has described the evacuation as probably the largest peacetime evacuation in the country's history. Julian Mattison owns a gin distillery in Provence. He was evacuated from his home at the beginning of last week and has not yet been able to return. He sent us this voice note.
We were asked at about 9 o'clock on Tuesday, the 21st, to evacuate. What happened was that friends were getting alerts to say that be ready. And so we sort of were inside that communication loop. We packed go bags or small rucksacks with bits and pieces. And so if we were asked to go, we'd be pretty ready. The police came up to our door, said, "You must leave now." And so we did. We couldn't access the house for a couple of days, and so both our house and our business were within reason a couple of 100 meters from the fires. Certainly, the business, the distillery, probably was closer than 100 meters, and the wine estate that hosts us certainly has suffered considerable damage to their vines. The police, the fire service, and all of the authorities have been fantastic. This is not their first fire, so they're well trained and very familiar with what has to be done. They're firm. They shut the roads when they need to. They open up when they know it's safe.
That's Justin Mattison. Well, the French Minister for International Partnership has urged tourists not to cancel their travel plans, saying, please come to France. In a moment or two, we're going to look at how this is impacting travel. But we're going to head to Spain now, where Spain's declared a national emergency for the first time ever in response to a wildfire. Some of the wildfires outside Madrid have merged. We can speak to the Times reporter in Madrid, Simon Hunter now. Simon, good morning.
Good morning, Rosie.
Extremely worrying pictures and reports. Tell us right now what the status are of the fires that are slowly encroaching onto the city.
Well, at this point in the morning, we're still waiting for an update from the authorities as to what has happened overnight. But what we have heard is that the major fear of the firefighting crews, that the massive fire in Madrid was going to merge with the huge fire in neighbouring Avila province, has not happened. There is a very, very small front that is linking the two fires, but there's still about a 15-kilometre separation between them further north. So that is the good news, because that has been what the authorities have been most worried about. But what we do know at this point is that more than 88,000 people, it's about 88,500 people, have now been told to shelter in place, to stay in their homes, or they've been evacuated and taken to shelters. The other big news yesterday was that this national emergency was extended to Toledo, which is in the southern from Madrid, Castilla y La Mancha region. What that means, that national emergency status, it means that the central government can take over the control of fighting the fire from the regions concerned. So far, the national government had taken over control of the firefighting in the Madrid region, and then in neighbouring Castilla y León, which is where Avila province is. But one of the fires has spread down to Toledo, so that's why the central government yesterday extended that national emergency status, so they can take control and better coordinate the responses to fight these blazes.
Yeah, give us an idea of the scale of the damage that has already been inflicted.
So we are talking about around 45,000 hectares of land that have been affected by the fires. What we're not seeing at the moment from the authorities is much idea of how many houses, how many homes, how many buildings have been affected by the fire, because obviously the places that have been evacuated are difficult to access. The emergency services are focusing on those evacuations. They are also trying to combat the fires, but really since very, very early on in this crisis, from Friday, the reports coming from the emergency services were that these fires are simply too big to extinguish, and so what the authorities have been focusing on is the evacuations, and as much as they can, stopping the spread of the fire by either doing controlled burns in residential areas or trying to put in fire breaks.
Yeah, what's the thinking behind the remain indoors advice? Is that about air quality for those residents?
Absolutely, yeah. In fact, there's been yesterday when I woke up yesterday, I opened the doors. I'm in central Madrid, about 50 kilometres from the nearest fires. And when I opened the doors yesterday, you could smell the smoke, and there was a haze over Madrid the whole day yesterday. That was sunny, and the light that was coming down was kind of it had this orange hue because it was going through the smoke. So there's been a general warning from the central government for people not to go outside if they can avoid it, to avoid breathing in the smoke, to avoid doing exercise outside, to use a proper mask if you must go outside. But also, if you remember, just a couple of weeks ago we had this awful fire in Almeria which claimed the lives of about 13 people, including British nationals, and unfortunately some of those deaths were reportedly due to people taking escape routes which had not been recommended by the authorities. So that's also a reason for telling people to stay in place, which is to avoid them taking routes that could be potentially dangerous. There's been some extraordinary videos that have been shared on social media, either by the authorities or by firefighters themselves or by members of the public, showing just how bad some of the roads are. It just, inferno on each side of some of the roads up in these areas, particularly in Avila province that I've seen so far. So yeah, it's very dangerous out there. So that's why we've got people who are being told to evacuate and to get to safety, and people are being told to stay in place.
Yeah. Simon, thank you very much. Simon Hunter, the Times reporter in Madrid.
Of course, Spain and France are two of the most popular overseas destinations for British tourists at this time of year, and many people who might be thinking of heading abroad, who might have already booked their holidays, will be wondering what happens if there are cancellations or if it's simply not the right time to take a holiday. Let's talk to Lisa Minot, who's head of travel at The Sun, currently in Lyon and on the way to the south of France. Hi there, Lisa.
Hi there.
We have heard holiday organisations saying no, please come on holiday. It's something obviously that's essential to the economy of France and particularly Spain, but in particular areas, as we just heard Simon Hunter talking about, there is apocalyptic scenes. What should people be doing if they booked a holiday in Spain or France over the next few hours?
Well, I mean, the first thing you do is you check with the FCDO, the Foreign Office Advice. What do they say? And they're currently saying that you can travel to both Spain and France without any issues at all. So your insurance doesn't kick in because of that, and it means that tour operators continue to have their packages go as they normally would. It depends how you've booked your bowl. If you've booked yourself onto a package holiday, you've got that gold standard of protection. Should something happen at your hotel or your destination, your tour operator would be having to either provide you with your money back within 14 days or offering you somewhere else to stay. Perhaps moving your holiday to another time. If you've booked independently, it's a lot more difficult because obviously you've got individual elements that you're trying to book. So yesterday we did see Bordeaux Airport closed, but it reopened. As long as flights are going, you would have to be actually going yourself as well. So it's more than looking at your travel insurance. And if you've got what is called natural disaster or catastrophe cover on your insurance, only about half of travel insurance policies have that. But that would kick in if you were in one of those affected areas.
Because one of the things that I was thinking about, Lisa, is imagine if you had health problems, maybe breathing difficulties, and you weren't obviously in harm's way when it came to the path of these wildfires. But obviously we've been hearing these stories about the dust and the smoke and the ash which is falling long distances away. And you just thought, well, hang on a minute, I don't want to risk my health by having to take up a holiday. Is that really down to the sort of insurance cover that you've got as to whether or not you're able to recover any money if you decide not to go?
Yeah, I'm afraid it is. Otherwise, it is just called disinclination to travel. I mean, as you know, as tough as that sounds, it is the kind of that until the SCDO advise against all but essential travel or all travel to a particular destination, your insurance will not kick in, and there is nothing to. And even then, you have to have the right type of insurance. The best you can do is make sure that you have got all of your devices fully charged, all of your details that are with the travel company that you're going with. You've got all of their details as well, and you keep in touch with them, and you're just covering and following the news as much as you can. We're heading down to the south of France right now. Our campsite in 2017 was evacuated twice in 24 hours because of wildfires that literally hit the back of the campsite. So I know from experience what it's like to be in that situation. It's incredibly scary, and all you can do is follow the advice of the local authorities and make sure that you've got everything as sort of, switched on as you possibly can, phones charged, all of your essentials. For us, making sure that we had our passports, our money, and our phones was the most important thing. Anything else after that, unfortunately, we could afford to lose. But it does sound pretty grim, I know.
It's not exactly a relaxing holiday that it sounds like you've got in prospect there. I mean, presumably you're doing your research and you've looked to see how close you are to these fires, and you think you're far enough away for it not to be a problem right now.
Yeah, where we're going, we're not going to southwest France. We're going to the Côte d'Azur at the moment. But, just a couple of days ago, there were fires quite close to the campsite. It is something that you are used to. I mean, I've been coming to the same campsite in the south of France for 50 years. And it is something that we're used to, something we're very aware of. You're very aware of the fact that you have to take those precautions to make sure that you're not going to be responsible for starting any kind of accidental fire. It's just something we've always been aware of. But I think for people going on package holidays, that there is no issue. They've got nothing to worry about. Anyone who's booked their own individual holiday, make sure you've got the best possible travel insurance.
What do you think the long-term implications are for Spain as a whole and perhaps southern France, because temperatures are going up and up and up, and now you've got this added risk of wildfires? Do you think we're going to see a rebalancing of the economy as holidaymakers go somewhere more temperate?
I think we've already seen that to a degree. People finding that those really high temperatures are going to be something that is going to impact whether or not they choose to holiday further north. We're seeing a lot more interest in the likes of Scandinavia, Denmark, Sweden, and the Alps as well. People using those, instead of going skiing in the winter, they're going and enjoying the Alps and those lovely temperate weather in the Alps in the summer. So yes, there is to a degree that sort of repositioning. But I also think there's an acceptance by the countries involved that there has to be far better management of their wild environments to make sure that they don't keep seeing this happen time after time after time. The good thing in Spain is that they have far more forested areas now than they had 100 years ago. A significant amount more, which is good for climate change. It's good for the climate, but it does mean you have to manage those forests and manage them correctly.
Lisa, well, thank you very much for taking a break from your holiday journey to speak to us. And although this sounds weird, I wish you luck,
thank you.
as well as happy holidays.
I'm hoping for just 2 weeks of lovely sunshine by the sea. That's all it's going to be.
Enjoy your break. That's Lisa Minot, who's head of travel at The Sun, currently in Lyon, on her way to her campsite in the south of France. A state of emergency has been declared, and in France the military have now been brought in to help deal with the scale of the disaster. Justin Matteson was evacuated from his home in Montfort-sur-Argens in Provence last week and sent us this voice note about his experience.
We were asked at about 9 o'clock on Tuesday, the 21st, to evacuate. What happened was that friends were getting alerts to say that be ready. And so we sort of were inside that communication loop. We packed go bags or small rucksacks with bits and pieces. And so if we were asked to go, we'd be pretty ready. The police came up to our door, said, "You must leave now." And so we did. We couldn't access the house for a couple of days. And so, both our house and our business were within reason a couple of 100 meters from the fires. Certainly the business, the distillery, probably was closer than 100 meters. And the wine estate that hosts us certainly has suffered considerable damage to their vines. The police The fire service and all of the authorities have been fantastic. This is not their first fire, so they're well trained and very familiar with what has to be done. They're firm. They shut the roads when they need to. They open up when they know it's safe.
Sounds like there has been a lot of disaster and emergency planning, but when you're dealing with something like a wildfire, it really does test everyone, and obviously they're going to become more common in the future as the climate heats up. Andy Elliott runs a wildfire training and consultancy business and has been involved in research into the subject in the UK and abroad. Let's speak to him now. Hi there, Andy.
Good morning, Nick.
Obviously, you will have been monitoring what's been going on. Just tell us, what is the main cause of a wildfire?
Well, generally speaking, it's us, it's people. Very rarely there are natural starts, such as lightning, for example, but predominantly it's us, either accidentally or deliberately or just through carelessness.
And you can mitigate against them, can't you? What is it that's been going wrong in France and Spain?
Well, in these really difficult conditions, almost anything will start a wildfire. Things like faulty car exhaust systems, for example. But the thing we can do to help is to avoid anything like naked flames, so garden bonfires, campfires, any cooking in the open. Activities such as that, we should do all we can to avoid those in these extreme conditions.
Sorry, faulty car exhaust systems?
Yes, so car exhaust systems, particularly the catalytic converter, they spit little lumps of ceramic out at about 600 degrees Celsius, and if they fall onto the roadside vegetation, that will start a fire. It's probably the most common cause of roadside ignitions.
Wow, I had no idea. And coping with these fires once they start, stopping them from becoming wild and out of control, that is a science in itself, isn't it? It's about maintaining the right levels of vegetation and breaks in between.
Yeah, there are lots of things that landowners can do in the way of managing the fuel. Effectively, if there is no fuel, then there's no wildfire. But creating appropriate breaks through fuel, again, where you have high-risk areas such as roadside verges, they need to be maintained in good condition. And all of those things will help to mitigate. Around the home, people forget that they can do stuff to keep their home safe. So maintaining the vegetation in their garden, for example, as well as things like sheds and log piles, none of that should be within 3 meters of your home if you live in a wildfire-prone area.
Do you think that people who live in these danger areas are getting enough of an education about things like that? Because the idea that you can do something yourself to make sure there's not fuel close to your building in order to protect it should there be a wildfire outbreak near you, is the message getting through in these fire-hit areas?
It depends where you are in the world, but yes, that message is improving. We have an organisation here in the UK called Firewise UK, and that's exactly the message they're spreading. They're helping people be safe in their home as the wildfire risk increases here. Other parts of the world, this is embedded into them. It's been part of their life for many years, so they're much more wildfire aware than the new parts of the wildfire world, such as Northern Europe, where we're seeing an enhanced wildfire risk year on year.
I mean, we've obviously had the wildfire in the Cairngorms in Scotland. I guess as the climate gets drier, we're going to see the risk of them happening more often here in the UK. Is the message that you're spreading getting through to the authorities, to the government? Are you part of disaster planning for this country going forward?
Yes, there's a wide community of people engaged in wildfire. Obviously, the Fire Rescue Services, the National Fire Chiefs Council. The UK has a very large wildfire research community as well. But also many of the land managers themselves are actively involved. And there are forums such as the England and Wales Wildfire Forum. There's a Scottish Wildfire Forum as well, and others dotted around. So government are, the messages are going to government. But of course, there's resourcing is part of the problem, and prioritising against other issues that are posing threats to the country.
I mean, it sounds like a fairly bleak future. What do you think mainland Europe and Britain is going to look like as the climate does get drier? What is going to have to change about the way that we prepare for this kind of thing, the way that we set out our countryside, and what we have to learn as citizens in order to protect ourselves and our families?
Well, it is going to get worse, almost certainly, and that goes for a number of natural disasters. Flooding and so on will also increase. And it's around adaptation and mitigation. So there are things we can do to mitigate the risk, but knowing this is going to be part of our future, we need to adapt. We need to change our agricultural practices. As civilians, we need to change the way that we live our lives and use recreation and so on. So lots of things we can do. It's not a disaster, but we will need to change the way we behave, and changing human behaviours can take a little time.
Indeed. Andy, thank you for your time. That's Andy Elliott, who runs a wildfire training and consultancy business.